Breaking news. Putin and Kim Jong-un. The fulcrum of the marginalized. Naturally, KCNA, North Korea's state-run news agency, went overboard with the hyperbole. Kim Jong-un's trip to Russia took place, at the moment when a new era of friendship, solidarity, and cooperation in the history of relations between the two countries begins. Never before had the North Korean dictator left his hermetically sealed-off territory for so long in order to roll his heavily fortified railcar across the border and pay a state visit to the Russian president. Putin rolled out the red carpet for Kim on September 13. A handshake that lasted 40 seconds, followed by a marathon meeting and a tour of the Cosmodrome in Vostochny, where Russia's carrier rackets for space travel were on display. In addition, the Pacific Fleet in Vladivostok's harbor will be visited, as will the Russian combat aircraft factory in Komsomolska on the Amur, which has been hit by Western sanctions. After this, it was reported in the North Korean government's official newspaper that Kim had engaged in unstability external revolutionary activities in Russia. A lone Siberian outpost. The fact that the Russian president would have to travel all the way to the remote Far East to meet the leader of a heavily armed but unprotected country shows just how lonely he has become. Putin and Kim's photo op in Siberia is a picture of isolation, as the saying goes. It is widely believed in Western government circles that Aftonbladet accurately reflects the state of affairs. British Foreign Secretary James cleverly focused attention on Putin's blatant power loss well before the carefully staged visit of the North Korean dictator. Putin turning to North Korea for aid is a symbol of Russia's desperation and isolation, he said. Weapons stockpiles in North Korea. According to credible estimates, North Korea possesses tens of millions of artillery shells and rockets based on obsolete Soviet-era weaponry. Huge quantities of artillery ammunition that Russia wants to protect because of the dramatic rise in demand in Ukraine. The United States and South Korea have long held the suspicion that Russia may try to buy weapons from Kim Jong-un in order to replenish their dwindling supplies. In turn, Russia may provide North Korea with technological support for its atomic and missile programs. Russian media reports claim that during his meeting with Kim, Putin opened the door to the topic of whether or not Russia would help North Korea, which has been under strict UN sanctions for decades. That's why we're here, it read. The leader of North Korea is very interested in rocket technology. They're also working to advance space travel. Is a violation of UN resolutions planned? U.S. government reports claim that Russia acquired North Korean ammunition from the year 2022 in late spring. North Korea supplied the Wagner Group of Soldnerfyr Eugeny Prigozhin, who narrowly escaped death in a spectacular aircraft crash last month. In December of last year, U.S. Security Council spokesperson John Kirby said, "We are really be concerned that North Korea has proposed to deliver additional military goods. These shipments also violate United Nations Security Council resolutions that have been in place against North Korea since the 1990s. For decades, North Korea has been working on an extremely ambitious nuclear and weapons program, developing not only short and medium-range missiles but also ballistic intercontinental missiles." Feeling threatened, South Korea. Yoon Suk-yeol, president of South Korea, said that the arms deals between Moscow and Pyongyang endangered the safety of both his country and the Ukraine. During a general debate at the United Nations, Yoon warned that if North Korea received the technology it needs to improve its own mass destruction weapons in exchange for weapons deliveries to Russia, it would be a provocation. North Korea has broken UN Security Council sanctions in this way. This year, North Korea made 2 unsuccessful attempts to launch satellites into orbit. Therefore, the North Korean dictator is more interested than ever in Russian expertise in developing spy satellites. UN Secretary-General's warnings. Since the Russian attack, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has been faced with the paradoxical situation of having Russia as a permanent member of the UN Security Council with veto power. The fact that Russia is planning close cooperation with North Korea, a country that has been subject to massive sanctions by the UN Security Council at Russia's urging for over 2 decades, makes it even more difficult for Guterres to maintain diplomatic form. For this reason, the UN General Secretary issued a veiled threat to Russia during a press conference. Any form of cooperation between your country and North Korea must respect the Security Council's sanctions regime. The U.S. government is already preparing for the possibility that Putin will go against his own announcement that he intends to hold himself to the sanctions. Russia has exhausted all feasible options because it is having trouble keeping its military occupied, it has been stated. James O'Brien, the U.S. State Department official in charge of sanctions coordination, has stated that any agreement between the two countries would violate existing sanctions. The words, Vereinbarungen bleiben vorst geheim. The public likely won't find out anytime soon whether or not North Korea is supplying weapons to the Russian military and what compensation Pyongyang receives from Moscow. According to one Russian expert quoted by AP, Alexander Woronzow of the Institute for Asia Studies at the Russian Academy of Sciences, the majority of agreements reached will remain secret for the foreseeable future.